Today we're looking at a book that is uh, deceptively simple, very short, very direct.
Right. We are deep diving into Ernest Hemingway's 1952 masterpiece, The Old Man and the Sea.
And it's a text that, I mean, it just demands context. Our sources all agree on this. It isn't just a story about fishing, not at all.
No, it's this incredibly intense exploration of endurance, of human dignity, and it's all tangled up with Hemingway's own personal battles at the time.
Absolutely. We're looking at the crushing weight of critical failure he was under, and then the complete shock of this instant phenomenal success. It's really about what it means to keep going when everything is breaking down, your career, your body, everything.
So our mission here is to really extract the wisdom from it, the philosophy of endurance and the pure literary genius packed into this tiny novella. We want to understand why this one book, which came out of a huge career crisis, didn't just save his reputation.
It completely redefined it. And it led directly to the Nobel Prize. It's the ultimate comeback story. Not just literary, but you could almost say spiritual.
Yeah, it's like he was refusing to accept the eulogy that critics were already writing for him.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the biography or the plot, let's start with the big question. Why this book? Why now? If we had to boil it all down to one single sentence that makes The Old Man and the Sea worth talking about today, what would that be?
It's surprisingly simple, but it's also incredibly profound. I think it is this. This novel is a timeless guide to refusing to surrender when the world or fate or just sheer bad luck takes everything from you.
It's the ultimate guide to refusing to surrender. I like that. That immediacy. I think that's what made its arrival in 1952 so electric. We have to talk about the context of its release because it was less a book launch and more a cultural shockwave.
You absolutely have to. You have to frame this against the backdrop of his public humiliation. For about a decade, Hemingway had been struggling. His previous novel, Across the River and Into the Trees.
That was 1950, right?
1950, yes. And it was just shredded by critics. I mean, savage. They call it self-indulgent, a parody of his own style. Proof that the great writer of the 20s was, a relic.
So they were literally saying he was finished, his career was over.
Openly. They were writing career eulogies for him. So the narrative wasn't just, oh, Hemingway has a new book. It was the washed-up, disgraced legend is trying one last time.
And in that environment of complete dismissal, it just hits with this incredible force.
Unprecedented force. Life magazine, which, I mean, in 1952 was one of the biggest media platforms in America, they published the entire text in one issue.
The whole book?
The whole book. And that print run, all 5.5 million copies of it, sold out in 48 hours. People were lining up at newsstands. It was this instant phenomenal success that didn't just silence his detractors. It just obliterated them.
And the reason we're spending time on this, for you, the listener, is that the book's message is bigger than fishing, bigger than literature. It's pure philosophy.
I think so. If you're feeling stalled in a career or fighting a personal crisis or just overwhelmed by a project that feels cursed, you are Santiago.
We're all Santiago at some point.
We're all Santiago. The story teaches that the only real measurement of your worth is the quality of your effort, your willingness to stand against impossible odds. It's just an essential text on dignity when you're facing what feels like permanent defeat.
So let's transition now to the man behind the book. Because to really get the sheer will that went into writing this, we have to see it as Hemingway's own fight, his attempt to reconcile the broken man he'd become with the legend he was supposed to be.
The man who wrote this he was perpetually at war, both literally and figuratively. Ernest Hemingway, born 1899, had a pretty comfortable start. Those early years hunting and fishing in Michigan, that really became the DNA of his fiction.
But the defining trauma, the event that really shaped his worldview on life and death, was World War I.
Right. He volunteered as an ambulance driver in Italy. And he suffered this just devastating mortar blast. It shattered both of his legs, required something like a dozen operations, months and months of recovery.
And that experience didn't just scar him physically.
No, it created a psychological blueprint for all his heroes. These men who face violence, trauma, chaos, and they do it with this stoic, quiet dignity. That led him to Paris in the 1920s with The Lost Generation, mentored by Ezra Pound, Gertrude Stein, forging that signature style of his.
A style that was almost a survival tool for a broken world. Okay, so now let's fast forward to the late 1940s. The disciplined writer of the 20s seems to be, dissolving into this chaotic, broken celebrity.
The chaos was truly overwhelming. By 1950, he'd been through 4 marriages, countless public affairs, and his body was a wreck, ravaged by years of heavy drinking, a whole list of untreated injuries, car accidents, and famously, multiple plane crashes.
He was in constant pain.
Constant agonizing pain. And on top of the physical decline, he was battling paranoia, severe depression.
Yeah.
He was trying to live up to this Papa Hemingway caricature he'd created, but the personal cost was just astronomical.
So when the critics declared him finished, it was almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the man who sits down to write The Old Man and the Sea. Why then? Why this particular story?
It was a desperate act of artistic survival. The sources confirmed this wasn't some calculated career move. It was visceral. He was trying to prove, maybe only to himself, that he could still write one more perfect, lean, true book.
And he wrote it incredibly fast.
In Cuba, in just 8 weeks. An astonishing burst of focused, almost manic energy.
Yeah.
And the story itself was rooted in the reality he saw every single day.
Inspired by a real person.
Absolutely. The novella was directly inspired by Gregorio Fuentes, who was the captain of his fishing boat, the Pilar. Hemingway had this deep, almost spiritual understanding of the pride and the suffering of these Cuban fishermen. He poured all of that Fuentes' life, the epic struggles in the Gulf Stream, that stubborn dignity, he poured it all into Santiago.
What's amazing is that in the middle of all this personal chaos, this physical breakdown, he achieves this peak discipline in his writing. Which brings us to his signature method, the iceberg theory. We have to break this down because it's the engine of the whole book.
It really is. Hemingway's philosophy was built on this idea that emotion and meaning are amplified by their absence on the page. He thought prose should be lean, muscular, brutal. Avoid flowery language, adverbs, adjectives, sentimentality.
Just short, declarative sentences, facts on the page.
Exactly. So if the writing on the surface is just the visible tip of the iceberg, maybe 1/8 of the story.
The other 7/8, the most powerful stuff, is all submerged. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means the writer gives you only the observable, objective facts. The action, the minimal dialogue, the physical reality. The submerged part is the deep emotional context, the history, the motivation, the philosophical weight. Hemingway is demanding that you, the reader, feel the unstated reality. He doesn't need to write. And Santiago felt despair. He just writes, Santiago's hands were bleeding. The bleeding hands are the despair.
That feels like a huge risk, though. Doesn't that risk leaving the reader feeling cold? Or just unsatisfied, especially with such a short book?
It's a massive risk. It's a tightrope walk. If the facts you choose aren't perfect, the whole technique fails. It falls flat. But in The Old Man and the Sea, the precision of the detail is so perfect that it gives the work this unbearable intensity.
Can you give us an example from the book?
Okay, a great one is right when Santiago hooks the marlin. He doesn't say, I'm scared or this is my last chance. He simply says, I must be very careful with this line.
On the surface, that's just a technical instruction for fishing.
Exactly. But the submerged 7/8 is everything. It's his awareness that this fish could kill him. It's the weight of his pride after 84 days of failure. It's that deep, strange, emotional connection he's about to form with his brother fish. It's his entire lifetime of skill being risked on a single chord. All of that weight is packed into that one simple, objective sentence. That's the iceberg theory at its absolute peak.
And that kind of disciplined clarity was exactly the redemption he needed after the last book.
Yes. Across the River was seen as the work of an artist who'd lost his self-control. This novella proved the exact opposite. It showed that his stripped-down style, when he wielded it with discipline and real emotional honesty, could produce something timeless. It was the perfect literary rebuttal to his detractors.
And the cultural validation of that comeback was just undeniable.
The recognition came hard and fast. In 1953, he won the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction. And then the ultimate validation, the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1954. The Swedish Academy explicitly cited The Old Man and the Sea as a major reason for their decision.
And the ultimate irony of this whole comeback story is that the man who wrote this incredible testament to endurance, he couldn't even go to the ceremony to accept the award.
In classic, almost self-destructive Hemingway fashion, no. He'd been gravely injured in two separate plane crashes. That happened within days of each other while he was in Africa. He couldn't travel to Stockholm. But the point was made. He had secured his legacy. He silenced the critics with a masterpiece.
Okay, so now that we understand the immense personal and critical weight on his shoulders, let's dive into the narrative itself. Let's map out Santiago's journey.
We start in a small Cuban fishing village, a place defined by the sea and by hard work, and our protagonist, Santiago, is introduced with his most defining feature right away.
The numbers. He's 84 years old, and he has gone 84 days without catching a single fish. That's more than just bad luck. In that community, that's a social verdict.
It's seen as permanent defeat. He's poor, he's alone, and his appearance reflects that hard life. Hemingway describes his face as creased, his hands scarred from the lines, and his mended sail is so worn out it looks like, quote, the flag of permanent defeat.
It's just a devastating portrait of a man who seems completely broken. But then, just as we were saying with the iceberg theory, we get that one counterpoint detail that flips the whole thing.
His eyes. Hemingway writes that despite all the ruin, Santiago's eyes are the same color as the sea and were cheerful and undefeated. That one detail tells you everything. The exterior might be destroyed, but the spirit, that 7/8 submerged part, is still whole. His identity is intact.
And his public humiliation is made even more painful by the other fishermen. They mock him, which makes the loyalty of the boy, Manolin, the emotional anchor of the whole first act.
Manolin is crucial. He represents the idea that love and respect can win out over shame and superstition. The boy was Santiago's apprentice, but after the 40-day mark of no fish, his parents forced him to leave.
To go to a luckier boat.
A more successful crew, exactly. But Manolin's devotion is absolute. He still shows up every evening. He performs these small, vital acts of tenderness.
He brings him food.
Brings him food, which the old man often pretends he doesn't need out of pride. He brings coffee, he brings the newspapers so they can talk about baseball. He's actively defying the logic of the village. The boy is what keeps Santiago from being completely alone in his misery. It's an act of profound, unconditional love.
And their relationship is really cemented by this shared mythology they have, centered on the great hero of endurance, Joe DiMaggio.
DiMaggio, the New York Yankees center fielder, is their guiding saint. They talk about him constantly, but not because of his home runs. They talk about him because he endures the terrible pain of a bone spur in his heel with courage and skill.
So it's not about winning, it's about enduring pain.
Precisely. Santiago believes DiMaggio would be a great fisherman because he understands suffering and perseverance. For them, the hero isn't the victor. The hero is the one who bears the pain with dignity.
So after 84 days of that pain, that humiliation, Santiago makes his final move.
It's an act of pure existential defiance. He tells Manolin he's going to go far out, beyond the usual fishing grounds, into the deep waters of the Gulf Stream where the legendary fish are. It's a huge risk, an attempt to break the curse. But it's more than that. It's an act of self-reclamation. He has to prove to himself that he's still the great fisherman he remembers being.
And now we get into the heart of the novel, the three-day struggle. This is where Hemingway's lean prose carries the weight of a mythological epic.
On the 85th day, just before noon, he hooks it. And the way Hemingway describes it is important. It's not a sudden panic tug. It's this slow, steady, deliberate weight that immediately tells him the opponent is immense. An 18-foot marlin.
And the solitude begins. For 3 days and 2 nights, he's locked in this battle, being towed by the fish far out into the open sea. It's a pure test of endurance.
And the physical cost is immediate and relentless. The marlin is too strong to reel in, so Santiago has to hold the line with his bare hands. The cord just cuts into his palms, turning them raw and bloody. His left hand cramps up into this useless claw, which he gets angry at, calls it a traitor. He's suffering from dehydration, sunstroke, hunger, and he has to manage all of it completely alone.
We see his brilliant tactical mind at work, though, despite the pain, how he tries to take the strain off his hands.
He ties the line across his back. He shifts the pressure from his palms to his shoulders and back, but all that does is transfer the agony. The whole thing becomes this exercise in managing unrelenting physical torture. It echoes the pain of DiMaggio's bone spur, but it's amplified by the isolation of the sea. He keeps drawing strengths from that image. If the great DiMaggio can endure, I can endure.
But his mental resources are just as important as his physical ones. He reaches back for that memory of the 24-hour arm wrestling match.
That memory from Casablanca is the mental blueprint for his survival. He fought the strongest man on the docks for a full day and a full night, enduring this agonizing pain in his arm, just staring his opponent down until the other man finally gave up at dawn. He calls that enduring the fire.
So he's reminding himself that he's done this before.
He's reminding himself that his ability to endure pain isn't new. It's a core part of who he is. It's the proof that he has the stamina not to quit.
What's so fascinating is the relationship that develops between Santiago and the marlin. This isn't just a fisherman trying to land a fish.
No, it evolves into something much deeper. Santiago starts to respect and then love and even identify with the fish. He calls the marlin brother over and over again. He calls it noble. He says, "Never have I seen a greater or more beautiful or a calmer or more noble thing than you, brother."
He sees the fish as a mirror.
As a perfect mirror, a creature demonstrating the same magnificent, desperate endurance that he's trying to embody. He feels the only way to honor the fish is to fight it with every single ounce of skill he has.
This elevates the whole story beyond just a fishing trip. It becomes mythological. It's man defining himself through his relationship with nature, not his mastery over it.
Exactly. The marlin is a partner in the struggle, not an object. But it's a partnership based on a necessary, brutal dance. Santiago starts praying, bargaining with God, promising hundreds of Hail Marys if he can just land the fish. The spiritual, the physical, the emotional, they're all intertwined and breaking down at the same time.
And the climax arrives on the third day when the marlin finally surfaces.
The fish comes up, and it's majestic, enormous. It proves Santiago was right to go far out. He gathers his last bit of strength, a final effort of pure will, and drives the harpoon into its side. The marlin leaps one last time, this magnificent gesture, and then it dies.
Santiago feels that wave of triumph, but it's instantly soured by guilt. This is where Hemingway injects that complexity into victory.
The second he secures the fish to the side of the skiff, the guilt hits him. He confronts his motive directly. I killed him for pride, he says. He calls the fish his brother, but admits he ended its life because he's a fisherman. Hemingway is showing us that victory, especially against a worthy opponent, is never clean. It costs you something beautiful.
But the tragedy isn't over. The victory is immediately challenged. The journey home is where the futility sets in.
The blood trail from the marlin is a catastrophic beacon. Within an hour, the first shark, a powerful mako, arrives. Santiago manages to kill it instantly with his harpoon, a final act of brutal efficiency. But when the mako sinks, it takes his most valuable weapon, the harpoon, with it.
And the loss of the harpoon just sets the stage for the inevitable total destruction.
The blood keeps spreading, and more sharks come. But these aren't noble opponents like the marlin. They're just relentless, mindless predators. Indifferent. Santiago fights them with everything he has left. A knife lashed to an oar, which breaks. Then the boat's pillar, just clubbing them until his hands are numb and useless. He's forced to just watch as they tear the marlin apart.
By dawn, the destruction is complete. All the meat, the tangible prize, the money, it's all gone. All that's left is the massive head, tail, and backbone.
And here is the absolute core of the book's philosophy. The devastation is total. So what does this say about the purpose of human effort?
The sharks, then, they become a symbol for every force that tries to devour human achievement.
Absolutely. They're the critics who tear down art. They're fate or bad luck that erases what you've built. They are the mindless indifference of the universe to all your hard work. This is the philosophical dilemma that makes the book so timeless.
And it leads directly to the most famous line in the entire novel, the one sentence that justifies the whole struggle.
A man can be destroyed, but not defeated. Santiago has been utterly destroyed, physically broken, his prize is gone. But because he fought with dignity and skill, he retains his spirit. He lost the physical reward, the meat, but the act of fighting, the dignity of it, and the proof of it, the skeleton, that cannot be taken away from him.
And the parallel to Hemingway's own struggle in 1952 is just inescapable. The critics tried to destroy his art, his reputation.
Right. His career, his health, his marriages, everything was being devoured by the sharks of his personal chaos and the critics' dismissals. But the act of creation itself, that Soka's fight to write one perfect book, that effort remained undefeated. Hemingway saying that true victory is internal. The value is in the quality of the effort, not the pounds of meat you bring to the dock.
Okay, let's move beyond the battle itself and synthesize the final moments of the novel and the deeper symbolic meanings that really cement this story as a classic.
We have to revisit Santiago's character.
Yeah.
He is the ultimate tragic hero, defined by endurance, yes, but also by a radical choice of isolation.
He chooses to go out there. He could have stayed in the village.
He could have accepted the charity of Manolin or stayed close to shore, but he chooses to risk everything because he defines himself by an internal code of courage and pride, completely separate from the village's standards of, financial success. This is what makes him a tragic hero. His greatest strength, his pride, also leads directly to his greatest suffering.
And Manolin provides that crucial emotional counterpoint to Santiago's stoicism.
Manolin is the figure of unconditional love. He's the redemption. He refuses to let Santiago be this tragic figure who suffers alone. When Santiago finally gets back, completely broken, Manolin weeps over him, and his promise at the end is everything for Santiago's recovery. Now we fish together again. It's a pledge of future loyalty. It ensures the old man's struggle as a witness and that the dignity he earned won't be forgotten.
But maybe the most beautiful and persistent symbol in the whole book is that recurring dream he has. The lions on the beach.
The lion's dream is the table. It's the ultimate counterpoint to the brutal reality of the sea. Santiago dreams of lions he saw on the beaches of Africa when he was a young man. and they're described very specifically. Young, golden, wild, and free.
Why lions, though? Why on a beach?
Well, the sea, the Gulf Stream, that's the place of pain, of toil, of necessity. The dream of the golden lions represents peace and strength and an unbroken spirit. It's totally separate from the pain of the struggle. They're a vision of pure, unspoiled nobility, the exact opposite of the mindless, devouring sharks.
So they represent what he's fighting to preserve inside himself.
Exactly, and an undefeated core of self. When he's dreaming of them at the very end of the book, after all that suffering, it shows he's achieved a kind of spiritual peace.
And his quiet return to the village is one of the most physically agonizing parts of the book to read.
Oh, it's an image of silent, private agony. He beaches the skiff in the dark, all alone, and he has to carry the mast up the hill to his shack. This heavy, awkward wooden beam. Hemingway details how he stumbles, falls to his knees, forces himself up again over and over until he collapses in his shack.
The image of an old man carrying a wooden beam up a hill, stumbling, it carries enormous symbolic weight.
Whether he intended it or not, it's an image of profound, solitary suffering. It cements his status as this kind of secular martyr. He endured the destruction and carried the weight of his struggle home all alone.
And then when the sun comes up, we get that scene with the tourists at the dock. The scene that really defines the world's misunderstanding of great effort.
Yes, tourists are there, gawking at this massive 18-foot skeleton lashed to the boat, and they're just completely incapable of comprehending the scale of the battle. One tourist asks the waiter what the enormous carcass is, and the waiter, either out of ignorance or just indifference, replies, "A shark."
And the profound thing is that the simple, wrong explanation is enough for them.
It satisfies the majority. The world, the casual observers, they just see a curiosity, and they accept the easiest answer. They completely miss the dignity of the struggle. They see a shark, not a marlin. A failure, not a triumph of endurance. Only the other fishermen, Manolin and Santiago himself, understand the magnitude of what happened out there.
But the skeleton provides the fisherman's verdict, the proof that can't be denied.
The sheer physical size of it, 18 feet, confirms Santiago's truth. He wasn't lying. He really did it. The skeleton is the physical, undeniable proof that he went far out and fought the great fish. It's the ultimate testament to his undefeated spirit, regardless of the material loss.
So let's just quickly summarize the major themes and ideas that give this book its enduring relevance today.
The first is definitely man and nature. This is not a man conquering nature. It's a man in an intimate, brutal dance with it. Nature is indifferent, but it can be noble, and Santiago respects the marlin as a worthy opponent.
The second, and maybe the most important, is the value of the struggle itself.
This is the centerpiece of the whole philosophy. The struggle, the refusal to quit, the application of skill under pressure. That is the reward. Dignity is found in the act of endurance, not the final outcome. Losing the prize actually reinforces this point.
And then there's that paradox of pride and humility.
Santiago admits he fought the marlin for pride, to prove his worth. But he shows profound humility when he accepts the total loss of the reward to the sharks. He accepts that fate and chance devoured his success, but he never lets them devour his spiritual worth.
This philosophical dilemma feels incredibly relevant today. Our culture is obsessed with metrics, with results, with the bottom line.
Exactly. We're constantly judged by that. Hemingway forces us to ask, how do you measure success when external factors, the sharks, the critics, a fickle market, destroy the physical results of your effort? He demands we measure it by the quality of the effort itself.
And moving to its broader influence, this book is one of the most referenced works of the 20th century.
It became, ironically, his most accessible and widely read work. It's taught in schools everywhere. Its influence goes beyond literature. The idea of the old man in the sea is now shorthand for this kind of heroic, existential battle against overwhelming odds.
And its reception really settled the argument for good. It confirmed its status as a classic.
It secured his place, instantly silencing his critics. It proved that his unique style could still produce perfection. And getting both the Pulitzer and the Nobel validated it as a modern classic based on both critical acclaim and massive commercial appeal. It was the redemption he fought for, a piece of art that outlived him and all the chaos of his life.
So we've gone far out with Santiago and Hemingway. We've seen how the chaos of the author's life really demanded the clarity and discipline of the prose in this book. I think the major takeaway for you, the listener, is that profound difference between being destroyed and being defeated.
I agree. And if you choose to read this novella, pay close attention to the silence, to that 7/8 of the iceberg submerged beneath the sparse language. Focus on the raw, physical details. The pain of the line cutting his hands, the specific memory of the arm wrestling match, the quiet dignity in the conversations about DiMaggio, and of course, the serene symbolic weight of the lions. That's where the real story, the philosophy, lives.
It's impossible to wrap this up without acknowledging the tragic personal parallel. Hemingway creates this perfect 127-page testament to endurance, to the undefeated human spirit. Yet the man himself couldn't sustain that fight.
Despite the masterpiece, despite the Pulitzer, despite the Nobel Prize, Hemingway continued to battle this crippling paranoia and severe depression. He was constantly convinced his talent was gone. And in 1961, at the age of 61, the man who wrote the ultimate ode to not quitting ended his own life.
The irony is just haunting.
It is. The author was destroyed by his demons, but the work remains undefeated.
Santiago brought home nothing but a skeleton proof that he fought the great fish of his life. Hemingway left behind the old man and the sea proof that he fought his great artistic battle and won.
So the question for you, the listener, is this. If the material prize is devoured by the sharks of circumstance, what is it that remains? What is the skeleton on your dock? What is the undeniable objective proof of the battle you chose to fight, the dignity you chose to preserve, and the endurance you demonstrated?
Go far out, fight the fish, dream of lions.